In the forgotten corners of history, where empires turn to dust and crowns rust into relics of sorrow, lie stories that the living were never meant to hear. These are not tales of glory or triumph, but whispers that cling to the cold stones of abandoned palaces, echoes of pain that the wind carries through broken archways. Our story tonight takes us to one such place, a kingdom built on blood and ambition, and a throne that became a tomb. We seek the truth behind a queen whose name has been erased, a king whose legacy is a curse, and a princess who vanished like a morning mist. We are searching for the silent tomb, not one built of marble and gold, but one constructed from secrets, betrayal, and a silence so profound it could swallow screams. For within the heart of this dead kingdom lies a chamber that holds more than just bones. It holds the devastating truth of how love, hope, and life can be systematically, cruelly, and eternally extinguished. Before the gilded gates and towering spires, there was only mud, blood, and the iron will of a man named Thuron. He was not born to rule. He was a second son of a minor lord, a forgotten child with a hunger that gnawed at his soul. While others saw borders, he saw weaknesses. While they spoke of honor, he sharpened his blade in the shadows. Thuron carved his kingdom from the flesh of his rivals, his path to the throne paved with broken shields and the bones of men who underestimated the ferocity in his eyes. He became King Thuron not through divine right, but through brutal conquest. His coronation was not celebrated with flowers, but watched by the fearful eyes of those who had bent the knee. He was a king of storms, his reign built upon the foundation of fear, and his crown was less a symbol of nobility and more a cold, heavy reminder of the blood he had spilled to obtain it. But a king of fear needs a queen of grace to mask his tyranny, a beautiful facade to hide the darkness that festered within his court. From the serene southern isles came Queen Seraphina, a woman whose beauty was said to rival the dawn. Her arrival was a masterpiece of political theater, a marriage designed to bring legitimacy and softness to King Thuron's iron-fisted rule. She was the kingdom's dove, a symbol of peace in a land ruled by a hawk. Seraphina was more than just beautiful. She was wise, her mind as sharp as any courtier's wit, and her heart possessed a kindness the kingdom had never known. She founded orphanages, patronized the arts, and walked among the common folk, her grace a stark contrast to the king's chilling distance. The people began to love her, to whisper her name with reverence, not fear. For a time her light seemed to pierce the gloom of the palace, but in a court built on shadows, light does not illuminate. It only reveals the monsters hiding in the dark. The king, her husband, watched her growing influence not with pride, but with a cold, calculating jealousy. Her goodness was a mirror, and in it he saw the ugliness of his own soul. In the second year of their marriage, a new light flickered to life in the stone-cold heart of the palace. Princess Lyra was born. She was a perfect fusion of her parents, inheriting the king's fierce, determined eyes and the queen's ethereal grace. For a fleeting moment, her birth seemed to thaw the icy heart of the king. He would stand for hours by her cradle, a rare softness gracing his features. The kingdom celebrated, believing the princess was a symbol of a new era, a promise that the darkness of King Thuron's reign might finally recede. Queen Seraphina poured all her love and hope into her daughter, seeing in Lyra not a political pawn, but a chance for a better future, a future free from the suffocating paranoia of the court. The princess was hope incarnate, a fragile blossom growing in the cracks of a crumbling fortress. But innocence is a currency in the games of thrones, and in this kingdom, it was a price that would eventually have to be paid in blood and tears. The birth of the princess did not unite the king and queen. It merely gave them one more precious thing to lose. The hope brought by Princess Lyra's birth was short-lived. The palace walls had ears, and the shadows held tongues. King Thuron's court was a viper's nest of ambitious lords and whispering spies, all vying for the king's favor. They saw Queen Seraphina's popularity with the people as a direct threat to their own influence. They began to poison the king's mind with insidious rumors, that the queen held secret councils, that her acts of charity were designed to win the loyalty of the army, that she secretly mourned the old dynasties he had destroyed. Every kind word she spoke was twisted into a challenge, every sad glance interpreted as dissent. The king, his mind already a fertile ground for paranoia, allowed these seeds of doubt to take root and flourish. The air in the palace grew thick with unspoken accusations. The queen found herself increasingly isolated, her handmaidens replaced with the king's spies, her letters read before they were sent. The palace was no longer her home. It had become a gilded cage, and she was beginning to understand that the smiling faces around her were merely masks hiding daggers. A kingdom was not enough for King Thuron. His ambition was a bottomless abyss, a raging fire that demanded more fuel. He dreamed of an empire, his name etched into history not as a king, but as a god among men. This hunger for absolute power consumed what little humanity he had left. He launched brutal, costly wars on neighboring lands, draining the kingdom's coffers and bleeding its fields of young men. The pleas of his advisors for temperance were met with cold fury. Queen Seraphina, who saw the suffering of her people, begged him to end the bloodshed, to rule with wisdom instead of wrath. But her words were like rain on steel. To him, her compassion was weakness, her pleas for peace a betrayal of his grand design. He began to see her not as his wife, but as an obstacle. The love he may have once felt curdled into resentment, then into something far colder. His family, the beloved queen and the innocent Princess Lyra, became secondary to the monument of power he was building for himself, a monument that he would gladly mortar with the bones of anyone who stood in his way. While the king waged his wars abroad, Queen Seraphina fought a quieter, more desperate battle within the palace walls. Her every move was monitored, her every word scrutinized. The warmth she had once brought to the court was replaced by a chilling silence. She was a prisoner in her own home, surrounded by opulence but starved of trust and affection. Her nights were sleepless, filled with the echoes of her husband's rage and the chilling whispers of his courtiers. Her only solace was her daughter, the little Princess Lyra, whom she tried to shield from the encroaching darkness. She would read her stories of brave heroines and just rulers, a desperate attempt to plant seeds of goodness in a garden being choked by weeds. The queen's tears fell in secret, watering the cold stone floors of her chambers. She knew she was losing the king, and she feared she was losing her kingdom as well. Her struggle was a silent one, her screams trapped behind a serene smile, her pain hidden beneath layers of silk and jewels. She was the queen, yet she was powerless, a beautiful bird whose wings had been clipped, left to watch the storm gather on the horizon. Princess Lyra grew up in a world of beautiful contradictions. She lived in a palace of breathtaking beauty but felt a constant, underlying chill. She wore dresses spun from gold thread but was wrapped in an atmosphere of fear. She was the heir to the kingdom, yet she possessed no freedom. Her father, the king, saw her not as a daughter but as a strategic asset. Her future was a topic of negotiation, her hand in marriage a bargaining chip to be traded for a new alliance or a treaty to end one of his bloody wars. She was paraded before foreign emissaries, her innocence a commodity to be appraised. The queen fought desperately to give her a normal childhood, to protect her from the cold calculus of her father's ambition. But the princess was not blind. She saw the sadness in her mother's eyes, the way she would flinch when the king entered a room. She learned that love in a royal court was a fragile, dangerous thing. Her destiny, once a symbol of hope, was now a fragile thread, easily snapped by the political machinations of a father who would sacrifice anything and anyone for his crown. One stormy night, while the king was away at the war front, a desperate search for old land deeds led Queen Seraphina to a hidden compartment behind the royal library's hearth. Inside, nestled amongst maps of his conquests, was a leather-bound journal and a sealed scroll, marked with the sigil of the previous dynasty. Her hands trembling, she broke the seal. The words written within were not a treaty, but a confession. It was a signed testimony from the king's former captain of the guard, detailing the night Thuron had seized power. He hadn't won the throne in a noble battle as the histories claimed. He had snuck into the palace like a thief, murdering the old, sleeping king in his bed along with his wife and their young son, the true heir. King Thuron was not just a conqueror, he was a usurper, a kinslayer, his crown stolen and washed in the blood of the rightful rulers. The queen held the proof in her hands, the forbidden secret that could shatter his reign and expose him as a fraud and a monster. And in that chilling moment of discovery, she sealed her own fate. She now knew the one truth the king could never allow to be spoken. The secret was a poison that seeped through the cracks in the kingdom's foundation. Whether the queen attempted to use it or it was discovered by the king's spies, the result was the same: chaos. To silence the truth, King Thuron accused his own wife, Queen Seraphina, of high treason, claiming she had forged the documents to install a foreign lover on the throne. He used her popularity against her, painting her as a manipulative witch who had charmed the people for her own nefarious ends. But his paranoia and tyranny had pushed the kingdom too far. The people, already starving from his endless wars and crushed by his taxes, did not believe him. The accusation against their beloved queen was the final spark that ignited the pyre of rebellion. Civil war erupted. The kingdom turned on itself, brother against brother, sword against sword. The very foundations of Thuron's power crumbled as his armies were fractured and his lords betrayed him. The bloody banquet he had started years ago had finally come for him, and the throne he had killed for was now collapsing beneath him. King Thuron, in his madness, would not grant Queen Seraphina a quick or merciful end. An execution would make her a martyr, a symbol for the rebellion to rally behind. He needed her to simply disappear. His solution was a final, horrific act of cruelty, born from the darkest corners of his soul. He dragged her not to the gallows, but to a new wing of the palace dungeons that was still under construction. There, in a small, windowless alcove, he gave the order. As the queen screamed, begging him to think of their daughter, Lyra, stonemasons began to brick up the opening, one stone at a time. The king watched, his face a mask of cold satisfaction, as the last sliver of light was extinguished, plunging her into eternal darkness. Her final scream was sealed behind the wall, her tomb built around her while she still drew breath. He announced to the world that the treacherous queen had succumbed to a sudden, violent fever. Her death was not a moment but a process, a slow, terrifying descent into silence, starvation, and madness, alone in the suffocating blackness. This was her silent tomb. With the queen gone and the kingdom in flames, King Thuron's reign met its bloody and ignominious end. The rebel forces, fueled by a righteous fury, breached the palace gates and stormed the throne room. They found him not as a mighty king, but as a cornered animal, his crown askew, his eyes wide with a mixture of rage and disbelief. There was no trial, no ceremony. The justice he received was as swift and brutal as the justice he had delivered to others. They dragged him from his throne, the symbol of his stolen power, and took him to the public square, the very place where Queen Seraphina had once distributed bread to the poor. They did not give him a soldier's death. He was stripped of his finery and executed by the hands of the common people he had terrorized for so long. His last sight was not of a grand empire, but of the hateful, vengeful faces of his former subjects. He died alone, unmourned, his body left in the mud as a warning. His ambition had brought him a crown, but it had cost him his kingdom, his family, and his life. In the chaos of the palace's fall, what became of the innocent Princess Lyra? History offers no clear answer, only a tapestry of tragic whispers. Some say she was killed during the siege, a small, forgotten casualty in the bloody tide of rebellion, her body never identified among the dead. Others spin a crueler tale, that the new rulers, fearing her bloodline could one day be used to challenge their claim, had her quietly spirited away to a remote, fortified convent, her name and title erased, condemned to a life of anonymous, prayerful servitude. A third, more haunting rumor suggests she simply vanished. In the final moments, as her father was being dragged to his death and her mother's screams were long silent, the little princess slipped away into the smoke-filled night, a ghost child destined to wander the world alone, forever carrying the weight of a fallen kingdom. Whatever her fate, Princess Lyra, the symbol of hope, was lost. She was the final, silent victim of her father's ambition and her mother's tragic discovery, her fragile destiny shattered into 1,000 forgotten pieces. The kingdom of King Thuron did not rise from the ashes. The rebellion that overthrew him devolved into bitter infighting between opportunistic lords, plunging the land into decades of turmoil and decay. The grand palace, once a symbol of power and terror, was looted and abandoned, left to crumble under the weight of its own dark history. The story of the tragic queen, the tyrant king, and the lost princess faded from memory into myth, a cautionary tale told by grandmothers to frighten children. No one remembered Queen Seraphina's name, or the goodness she had brought to the land. No one knew the location of her true resting place, that unmarked, unhallowed wall deep within the ruins. The silent tomb remained undisturbed, its horrifying secret kept safe by the passage of time. The entire kingdom became a monument to ruin, a vast graveyard of ambition where the only sound was the wind whispering through the bones of a history too terrible to be remembered. Power is a hollow crown, and a throne built on secrets is destined to become a tomb. The story of King Thuron, Queen Seraphina, and Princess Lyra is not an anomaly of history. It is a timeless echo. It teaches us that ambition, left unchecked, will inevitably devour everything it touches: love, family, honor, and life itself. The Queen's silent tomb is more than just her final resting place. It is a symbol of every truth that has been buried, every voice that has been silenced, and every innocent soul sacrificed at the altar of power. The stones of that forgotten wall hold a chilling lesson, that the greatest tragedies are not written in the annals of victors, but are screamed into a silence that history can never truly break. Their ghosts linger, a permanent stain on the memory of the world, reminding us of the terrible price of greed. History bleeds, and its echoes are written in the cries of kings, queens, and lost princesses. This was the Fear Room. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more dark history tales.